This is your Daily 5 for Thursday, April 30th, 2026. There's been a movie on my radar for a little while now that I didn't actually intend it to be a movie I watched right after a later career Dario Argento film, but that's just how it worked out, because it is meant to be an homage to Suspiria. It is, in fact, directly marketed as that. And what I'm talking about is 2025's Saturnalia, I think is how it's supposed to be pronounced. A movie that became available on digital, I think within the last 2 or 3 weeks or something like that I rented off Amazon for $4. And this movie is, as I said, it is meant to be a tribute to the original Suspiria. And when you watch the trailer for it, you get that right away. I mean, that's what it is meant to. This is not a case where somebody is trying to emulate another film and not being clear about it. No, they're being very clear about it. And so I watched the movie, which has kind of, I think, okay reviews. I would say the movie is good overall. And in terms of a movie that is trying to compare with one of the greats of Italian cinema and horror cinema in general, especially if you're getting into mood and atmosphere, I think it does fairly well. In fact, my only complaint, not my only complaint, but in terms of the Suspiria imitation or whatever you homage, I don't think there's enough of it. I think that's actually the movie's biggest problem, when it does start to deploy those Suspiria-like visuals, a lot of heavy color usage, dream state things, atmosphere, and just layers of mood and dreaminess. I think it works very well. I think it's great. There's a couple of images that really struck me that I thought were hauntingly good. I think the problem is the movie doesn't have enough of that. And this is something I feel like a lot of movies get wrong and don't do correctly that Suspiria did. One of the things, if you watch the original Suspiria, is the story is not the tightest. It's a fairly minimal, loose narrative. It's about a dance school full of witches. And you get these little bits of lore around it and all that, and it's fine. But it's really not the strong point of the movie. But you don't care, because the movie deploys so much atmosphere, such interesting visual splendor, that the narrative becomes secondary. You know it's there, it services the visuals enough, but you're there to look at Suspiria as opposed to experience it. If you want the story side of it, that's the remake, as Lando and I talked about. That's where the story becomes really much stronger, and the visuals, as you would expect, fade back and become less in your face. It's really interesting to watch those two movies in comparison, because they do opposite things, and they do those opposite things really, really well. Saturnalia, when it uses those visuals, when it does that, it's very good. The problem is it doesn't do it enough. And I understand it's low budget, but the problem there is then when you don't have enough of the visuals, the narrative becomes more important, and the narrative in Saturnalia is just not there enough. I feel like it's an hour-and-a-half long movie. I would have put another 10 minutes in to really flesh out and nail down the details of the plot, because I'm pretty sure I know what they are, but there's certain, and I'm not going to get into spoilers in case you watch it, there's certain things that I feel like, okay, you waited way too long to bring this in. And when it's so brief, and again, I'm trying to dance around saying what it is. Now, I don't want to say this all, so the narrative had to fill in for some of the visuals that were missing, and it didn't do it enough. That's my biggest complaint about the movie. A lot of stuff the other people, like critics and everything, complain about, I throw a lot of that away because it's not stuff that's new to horror movies. It's been around forever. And so I don't care about the fact that the actors don't look the age they're playing. Oh, gee, that's something that never happened before. Of course, it's always been like that. So what? That stuff doesn't bother me. But again, if you're going to say you're imitating Suspiria, then if you're not going to have enough of those visuals, you've got to have more of the narrative, and it has to be a little bit more clear on what's going on. And it's not that look, I'm fine with vague plot elements, but you can't just throw them in the last 10 minutes, 15 minutes of the movie, and then have them still be vague if it's supposed to be explaining what's going on. There's ways to do it properly, and there's ways that you can fumble it. Still, all of this is not to say I thought the movie was bad. I actually had a good time with it, and I would tell people who are fans of that older Italian, like Suspiria type of filmmaking, it's probably worth watching, especially for $4 to rent. It's an interesting movie to see because there is a lot of success in it. And I think that makes it worth viewing, and I like to support people who are at least trying to do something and are succeeding at least to some degree. So while I'm not going to tell you it's a great movie, I would still say 2025 Saturnalia, probably worth a watch. Later.